People your age, Emily, have a word for that. Do you know which word I'm thinking of?
No.
Cringe.
Oh yeah.
Have you heard that?
Very cringe.
Or
Very
is that
cringe.
the generation before you? Because I don't even know where to file some of these things anymore. Like
That's my generation. Yeah.
cringe. Yeah. If when
Yeah.
they do that, and that's the thing about this Pope, he just doesn't seem cringe to me. He seems like. I mean, I imagine I'm gonna hate some stuff he says. I'm gonna love some stuff he says. I mean, maybe not hate. That's probably, but I'm gonna be unhappy with some stuff he says. I'm gonna be happy with some. But as far as a pastor, I feel like I would love it if this guy was the pastor. I love my pastor. We have a great pastor, but I'd be super happy if this guy was the pastor of my parish. And so he's the pastor of the whole church. Good on him. I hope it goes good. I wanted to talk to you too about this article. I found it in Real Clear Investigations, and Real Clear is a news aggregator, but they also do some of their own reporting. And I haven't really read a lot of their reporting, but I really wanted to read this one. So I'm going to go through it with you, and you just, either one of you, Jeff or Emily, just stop me. But here's the headline. This is what caught me. And this was 2 days ago it came out from Real Clear Investigations. Samuel Abrams and Joel Kotkin are the authors of it. Equal but separate: how the gender divide is rewiring America. Even as many scholars and pundits deny the difference between the sexes and vastly expand the concept of gender, I think we can all agree that that's going on. Society is increasingly dividing along these clear and simple lines. Mountains of data and broad-based studies show that men and women increasingly inhabit separate psychological, relational, and civic universes that interpret adulthood, authority, intimacy, and obligation in profoundly different ways. If that is true, and I have to say I have a terrible feeling that it is, that is very, very bad news. I don't know, what is your impression? Does it strike either of you that that's true?
Yeah.
It does?
Go ahead, Emily.
I mean, I was going to say, I just think, was that your opinion that if this is true, this is very bad?
That was me. Oh,
Or
I'm
is that
sorry.
the
I
article?
didn't. Oh, I forgot to put the quotation marks around. Yeah, that was me commenting on that paragraph. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's like something to be said of men and women are different in the ways that we understand the world and the way that we experience it in a broad capacity. I'm happy to go through one by one each of the things that they listed in the article. But I would say that just seems kind of commonsensical, and I don't think that's a bad thing personally.
To be different is not a bad thing, but to be
Yes.
occupying different universes is a bad thing.
Okay, yes.
Where we're just not relating to the world in the same way anymore. And I do feel that there is some of that. And I sometimes see men, particularly young men who are interested in maybe marriage or relationships with young women, they kind of almost pretend to be in that women category, to kind of like, it's almost like a desperation move, it looks like to me sometimes. They put themselves over the, oh yeah, I think like you, I feel like you. And you're like, dude, no, you don't. Like, stop it. That's weird.
I think the word is simping, right?
Oh, is that, we're going to do all this? Oh, we're going to do all, yeah. And you feel like, I don't know, because it just seems so different from the way that men are thinking now. And I do think, of course, the complementarity of the sexes is a very, very good thing. But when it's not complementary, but it's just, we're just facing off in two different directions, I think that's a very, very bad thing. I think we're in trouble. And let me just go on then with the article. You guys can comment as I go, as you like. The most visible sign of this cleaving of the sexes is the steady decline of marriage and childbearing. The share of U.S. adults ages 25 to 54 without partners rose from 29% in 1990 to 38% in 2019. In 2021, 1/4 of U.S. 40-year-olds have never married. Even as fertility rates continue to fall, the percentage of children born out of wedlock and living with one parent has risen. I want to just pose something to you. If you have a woman who get set in a certain way of thinking that is opposed to the way the men of her generation are thinking. And if you have a man who gets set in a way of thinking that's opposed to the way the women of his generation are thinking, these two are going to have a hard time making a marriage together. And I think that's why you hear a lot of women going, there's just no men that I'm interested in, or there's no eligible men, or just different ways of saying it. And men just kind of, men don't talk about it. They just kind of grump their way through it. But I think we're setting ourselves in some, it seems to me, and Emily, correct me if I'm patronizing in some way here, because I'm not trying to be, but it seems to me it's much more likely that you will find women kind of psychologizing the world in a way of like, I don't feel safe, or safe spaces, or the various, I don't know, that's mansplaining, or I can't think of some of the other phrases, but there's all this psychologizing of there's a certain way to relate to me, and you got to get it right how you relate to me, because I have all this, psychological language and men are like, I don't relate that way. I feel like the way, so, and men are wasting their time on video games, pornography, marijuana, and not all men, but a lot of men are. And so they're like shut down, and women are like very actively looking for someone who will respect all the psychological categories that they have been told are essential, and men are shutting down. Now, Emily, does that sound patronizing, what I just said, and stupid, or?
No.
Okay.
No, I was going to kind of add on to that. It's interesting to me of like the findings of whatever, this research or whatever their opinion is coming from. But it's interesting because we live in a culture that is trying to say that there are no differences between men and women, and that they're the same, and that any sort, like, these are just social constructs of women, like to wear makeup and dresses, and we like to act this way, and we want to be protected, and men want to protect, and men like this. Those are just social constructs that we need to abolish. And if you want to act like a woman while you're a man, that's fine, because there is no real woman. And from my perspective, it almost seems like because we're forcing men and women to kind of abolish any sense of true femininity or masculinity, it's like we've almost made them hate like the other side, if that makes sense.
It does make
you
sense.
Force a woman to act like a man, and you tell her that she needs to do everything a man can do, otherwise she's somehow oppressed. And now that's in turn caused women to look down at men, because they're like, I'm a mom, and I also go to work, and I do all of these things, and you don't know what it's like to have to do all of those things because you're a man, but yet you're trying to tell me I'm doing the same thing as you and we're all equal. You know what I mean? It's very condescending. The view that you get of the other sex is very condescending. Yep. And ultimately you still come to the conclusion you don't understand me, but now it's all twisted, Yeah,
you can have a pretty good marriage without understanding each other. As long as you have to accept each other. Like, I don't think understanding is that important, in the sense of, like, I want to understand what you say, what you tell me you need. I want to love you in the way that does all that, but I don't have to understand why you feel that way. Like why would it be necessary for a woman to be understood by a man in the sense that she says, I like it done this way, or I need this, or this is something that's like what we need to do for each other is care for each other, not necessarily understand each other. I think that's way overrated. Understanding is it's very loving to say, I don't understand that. That's nothing like the way I think about it.
Yeah, but I guess you just make an attempt, right? And that's part of marriage, is you try to make attempts to understand one another.
Yeah, but I guess I can't. But the male doesn't always understand the female motive. The female doesn't always understand the male motive.
Right.
But you can understand the person in the sense of, okay, you're really important to me. That's like, I don't understand why you need it that way, but I can do it. I sometimes feel like we're trying to get too many needs met. You don't need all those needs met. You don't need someone to deeply understand you just need someone to accept who you are and care for who you are as you are.
I almost think there's more virtue in some sense when they don't fully understand, but they're willing to do it anyway.
Yeah.
Like the classic example of, I like to load the dishwasher this way, and your wife is like, no, but like I like to do it this way, and you can't understand why in their mind they like to put that on that shelf and in that way, but you just do it for their sake
That's
because
right.
you want to make them happy.
Well, I think that men learn this with the first pregnancy, in that your wife is going to need things that you're not going to understand at all. And she just says, look, I need it. You know, like my wife, one thing she needed at 11 o'clock at night was the chicken Caesar salad from Pizzeria Uno. I don't understand that. I don't need to understand that. What I need to do is get up and go get her the chicken Caesar salad from Pizzeria Uno. Like the idea that she would need me to understand, that's crazy. Like what do you need, dear? Okay. I'll get it. Now, I do think sometimes we need to understand in the sense that I'll often think we don't realize how important some things are to the other person. Like, it's really important to me that you do this and you keep not getting it. Okay, I get that kind of understanding. But I don't understand a pregnant woman. I mean, I don't. I don't know that I can understand a pregnant woman. But I can love her and give her what she needs. Am I wrong, Jeff? You've had a bunch of kids.
Yeah, I was just to say that it's, like I said, that's why I said the attempt to understand. You know, that's the listening part, and yeah, because I'm never going to grasp my wife in her totality. She's like a mystery, right? But,
yeah, right.
But by making that attempt, you know, I'm going to sit and listen here, even though I don't understand. Yeah, it's
right. It would be like a mother trying to understand, why do the boys have to always play with guns? You know, look, Mom, you're not going to understand that. Just leave it. Like the mother who thinks she needs to understand that is going to drive herself insane. You just need to accept that's boys. That's what they do. That thing when you were saying how we act like men and women are the same now, I was listening to Dr. Ray. I might have already shared this, but I love Dr. Ray, and he was giving a talk the other night, and I was in the audience, and he was making fun of that idea that men or women are the same. And he goes, you know, I've been around men for like 60 years. I've never heard one say to another one, cute top. I was like, yeah, that's the truth. Like that, like the failure to admit the basic reality is deadly, and that I think that's why we're on this death spiral. It says here the physical separation is mirrored in our politics, where the gender divide is now a prime determinant of party affiliation, especially among the young. The fierce tribal divide in America is not merely a clash of Democrats and Republicans, but also a contest between the very different visions and priorities of women and men. The growing antagonism between the parties increasingly affects the distance between the sexes. And here, this is what I'm talking about not needing to understand. If a woman in a relationship has a certain set of political views and a man has other set of political views, they don't need to understand one another. They need to respect one another. They need to, but this idea that you've got to be somehow perfectly politically compatible in order to, in order for a marriage to work, this is what makes people so scared of marriage, because you just can't get that compatible.
Yeah. No, I mean, from my perspective, I think there's a lot of people who are just, they understand marriage to be this like, you have to already be this perfect person for me. There is no sense of change that I need to do, because if I change for your sake, then I'm not being true to myself. And that's why there's all of this cohabitation and literally parenting when you're not even married. You're having a child with this person. Why? Because you're like, I need to test run this. I need to see if this person's going to be a good match, because if they're not a good match for me and maybe it won't work out when we're living together, then I need to get out of here before we actually commit.
Yeah.
So I think there is this sense of wanting to have things already be set, and because they're never going to find that person that everything is always smooth with that person, because we're human and, you know, we're going to disagree at times and see things differently. They just never commit to anything. Very sad.
Well, let me ask you this, Emily, for people your age in particular. We now are in a political kind of environment where both sides see the other side not just as wrong, but as evil. And so a young man is conservative, just to be kind of stereotypical, because it could go either way, of course. But a young man is conservative, a young woman is liberal. She doesn't just see him as different than her. She sees him as evil. And he doesn't just see her as different. he sees her as buying into something that's just morally wrong. So they're putting a heavy burden on each other of their morality.
I think the hardest thing for young men is with the difference between pro-life and pro-abortion is, am I going to marry a woman who will abort one of my children? And I think that's a fair divider between politics.
Yeah, that's a pretty big one.
True.
Yeah, I mean, there are some. Yeah, like I'm not saying it's not important to think alike. Certainly, my wife and I are religiously completely different. We were religiously completely. You couldn't get more different than we were when we got married. That made just the first 27 years of our marriage very, very difficult. It got easier after that. But the first 27 years was very difficult. So I don't feel like I have some Pollyanna view of it doesn't matter, what your views are, because it does. It matters a lot. But I feel like I was trying to respond to your point, and maybe I drifted off from your point. But help me out.
It's just that there are certain irreconcilable differences between politics, but you can also still find ways to reach across. Maybe one person is more liberal within a certain framework. Like within the Catholic framework, there's liberal Catholics who are still Orthodox, conservative. There's tradie Catholics.
Sure, right. But I do think that Emily's probably right. That a lot of people are. It's just not going very far. It's not going even to the pre-marriage stage because they're just cutting everybody out because they think differently than them. Or am I missing your point, Emily?
No, I mean, I think that's fair. I think it can be applied not just to politics, but a lot of spheres of life, whether it's like your views on your just like habits, anything like your lifestyle, how you want to live. Do you want to travel? Do you want to do these things? I think people are waiting and waiting and waiting. Like I get comments all the time about how crazy it is to not live with someone before you marry them, because how could you ever know if they have annoying habits or they're super messy before you marry them? How could you ever know that? And if you move in with them, maybe they're going to change right away, or maybe they're going to have these habits that you can't deal with. And they see those things as like insurmountable hurdles that you can't work through. And that's what's weird.
Yeah, they don't see it as, I think probably because we put too much onto marriage. And as much marriage is the most beautiful institution in the world, but it's not everything. It can't do everything for you. And so, yeah, if you think it's going to be a horrible marriage if this person is messier than I am, yeah, it's going to be annoying. That's not what marriage is. Marriage isn't being exactly alike with the other person.
Yeah, it actually builds you in virtue, right? Is when you go through that, one person's messy, one person isn't, and then you have years of that. You both turn towards one another, and then you find yourself even adapting and loving them for it. So it's just maybe a fear of transforming oneself or giving one's own desires up for the other.
It feels like to me that back in, say, the 1930s and 40s, when the really strong social pressure was that you never will divorce, that marriage is a lifetime, but people grokked that. You didn't have to be Catholic or Mormon or whatever. People understood marriage as a lifelong thing. For some reason, it seems to me at that moment, people had an easier time entering into marriage than they do now that we don't think marriage is permanent. Why is that? You would think that if people really believe I'm entering in a lifelong relationship with you, that would make it really hard. But that didn't make it hard. That made it easier. It's now when we believe in divorce, everybody panics. We've got this sense of panic about the whole thing.
That's like, so the rates for divorce for couples that are in arranged marriages are extremely small. And you can say that's because of the culture that they're living in, that their culture shuns divorce more than like American culture would. But honestly, I think there's a big thing to be said about when you enter into an arranged marriage, I am committing to this person. And yeah, we're not going to have 100%. We're not going to see eye to eye on everything 100%, but I'm committed to you. And this marriage is so much more than just my feelings. Like, it's our family, it's commitment. And I honestly think most people today in America, when they go and say their wedding vows, if they can even be said to be vows, they don't truly mean them, because really what they mean is, I vow to be with you till death do we part, as long as you still make me happy, as long as you never cheat on me, as long as you never leave me, as long as fill in the blank, a million different scenarios where they would say, oh yeah, no, but I would divorce them if that happened. And that's why, I mean, when you have divorce in your back pocket, you know it's an option, then you're going to take it when you start to realize how hard marriage is.
I feel like you
So,
opened a door for me in what you just said, in my understanding, that if marriage is based on feelings and not on social convention, you just panic because you know your feelings cannot last for 60 years. Whereas convention can keep you together for 60 years, your feelings can't. And so it's just too much burden on your feelings. That's why I feel like sometimes you just got to tell young people, like, I just want someone who understands me. No, you don't. Like, you don't need someone. Jesus understands you. You know, you need someone that you could get along with and make a life with and have children with and grow in the faith with and all those things. You just don't need all this emotional stuff you think you need. As a matter of fact, basing your relationship on those feelings will destroy your relationship. It will not last.
It's also scary to think if you're worried about the other person divorcing you because of their feelings, right? And think of the resentment that can brew, because instead of you both being in this thing together, hey, this is a marriage. We've got 60 years ahead of us. Let's try to make it not unpleasant.
Yeah, that's like that's a pretty good standard. First, let's start with not unpleasant. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you got to go, okay, how are we going to make this work? We're a team. Versus if I make her mad enough, or if I annoy her, or if I get fat, or whatever it might be, she's going to leave me. Well, then I'm going to start thinking of, like, what are the things that I'm going to do so I can leave her first? Or, I don't want to be a
really good
loser out
point.
of
Yeah,
this.
there's too much of a head game that's attached to the whole thing, rather than the settled feeling, we're going to figure this out one way or the other. A lot of it's going to hurt because that's just the case with relationships. But the hurt is not going to be the thing that determines whether or not this lasts. Other stuff is going to determine that this lasts. Yeah, I think that's right. I'm going to continue on. Once the central cooperative engine of civilized continuity, the relationship between men and women is increasingly seen as a zone of tension, risk, negotiation, and withdrawal. Some of this is due to the battle women have had to fight for greater freedom in the last 60 years, which of course has had many positive effects. It has not just expanded women's opportunities in education and the workplace, it has also allowed women to imprint their values on a patriarchal culture that was long ruled by men, but this time increasingly for their own benefit. I kind of feel like these guys are writing an article that's giving us the tough truth about where we are. And this is the paragraph where you go, of course, it's great that women have all this freedom. Like, you almost feel like, oh, okay, you're just checking off a box here. Because the immediate criticism of this is, oh, you don't believe women should be liberated or whatever. So you just this feels like a CYA.
Yeah,
paragraph to me.
The editor put that one in there, I think.
Yeah, right. This is well, I don't know. Do you feel reassured by this paragraph, Emily, or does it feel like a CYA?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's just obvious of like, well, I can't be accused of being a sexist or supporting something I don't believe, so let me just add this in here really quick. But it's like, okay, well then what's the problem? Like, the obvious question is, well, how did we get here as a society? What led us here? What's changed since 60 years ago? Oh, all of these, like female liberation movements, that's a big change. Oh, but that's a good thing. There must be some other problem that we haven't found yet, I guess. Like,
yeah, and
it's silly.
Of course, I mean, like right, and the implication is, if you say something's wrong with relationships between men and women, you better say you're not against what. When I was a kid, they used to call women's lib. That's how old I am. They used to call this women's lib. Or are you in favor of women's lib? And I think that meant you drank tab or something. I don't know, but I'm not exactly sure what made you in favor of women's lib. But yeah, so I do feel like there's a little bit of this there's still a fear to really be honest. We're not really being honest. I mean, as much as I respect these writers for what they're doing, and they're doing a service here, we're still couching everything. We're still like, we don't want to talk about, oh, you know what happened when women, like half the women moved into the workforce? Well, that changed the workforce for men, and it changed the cost of housing for everyone. Like, you want to just talk about raw economics? It made it way more expensive for everyone to get a house. So, like that, which forced the other half of women to go to work, and now they resent it, that they have to work in order to have a house for their children. So it's not all positive. And so, you know, I feel like this is a little bit, I don't know, let's be honest. Let's just, be honest with each other about what has happened. Men have been dislocated. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not blaming women for that. I think many men enjoy the dislocation. They'd like to smoke pot and play video games. It's very pleasant for them. But the fact is, they've been dislocated. That has happened.
Yeah, and I think the ground in that territory is currently owned by a lot of insane people that aren't winsome to listen to, kind of like the He-Man Woman Haters Club.
Oh yeah,
but if you have
the poor boys,
right?
But his dad's left the home.
But if you get more just honest voices to talk about that and say, like, these are the fruits of this, then maybe that ground can be fertilized with more decent voices instead of just held by the
right. That's right. I think that's a good point. That normal men, if that is even as a category, I'm not sure that that's a category, but
that's an oxymoron.
Yeah, but normal men have to be honest about the dislocation and what it has meant. You know, there was a point, I don't know, 10, 15, 20 years ago where more women were getting bachelor's degrees than men. Okay, this, like, I'll do the paragraph. What a great liberation for women, blah, 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 blah. Okay, we all know that. Thank you. Thank you, Earth, for approving my comment. Yeah, we get that's good for, can we just say what it means for men without having to couch it in things that don't hurt women's feelings? Like, at a certain point, if the conversation always has to be terrified of women's feelings, we're just not going to be honest about it. I mean, and this ain't working for anybody, so get over your feelings if you want to know the truth.
What are you saying about women's feelings, Si?
No, I'm not saying it about women's feelings. I'm saying about, like, whoever is the editor of this is obviously couching this in terms that are meant to make this to bring the threat level down for every female reader to zero. You can't have a conversation with men where the threat level is zero. You can't. Not if you want men to be men. You're going to have to deal with the fact that some things are going to be said that you're not going to like. Do you want that conversation or do you not? Because I think the answer is no in a lot of situations. I think the answer is no. Do you think that's harsh what I'm saying, Emily? Does that strike you as harsh?
No, but that's because also I'm the type where I can, like, I argue with people online. So, like, I'm more, like, open to men just being blunt with me. Yeah. And I can appreciate that. I think that there's women who are very defensive, though, because they already have this, like, they've been taught from a young age that men look down on them, that they are, not as fast as boys, not as strong as boys or whatever. And so they're, like, almost being lied to that, like, the world sees them as less than, even though, like, we don't. No. And so they immediately get triggered, so to speak. They get defensive when a man, I don't know, just, like, openly
says what he thinks.
Hashes it with them. Yeah, maybe he says what he thinks, or I don't know, to be honest.
You know, most men are not the fastest man or the strongest man. We've had, like, I think this is something that a lot of women don't get. Like, it's not, men have had to deal with that as well. Like, if the world is based on men have greater value the faster they can run, then most men don't have that much value either, because we're just not that fast runners either. So but I don't want to diminish what you said about women, though, because I do think, well, let me ask you this, Emily, since you are our expert from your side of the great culture war we are currently embarked upon. It does seem to me that there is a way in which it's true that men can be jerks to women. That's been true for all of human history. And a lot of that has to do with
Yes.
physical strength. I mean, because a lot of society has been based, when you're a hunter-gatherer society, physical strength is really important. And that never left. That's there. It also seems to me there's kind of an industry of female grievance, starting with what they're watching as preschoolers practically. And it's an industry that builds up no matter what men say about you, that might seem like a positive message. That's like one of the most negative messages you can give a girl. Whatever men say about what are men saying about me? Like, what
Exactly.
like, it doesn't matter what they say. What are they saying? I would like to know. It seems to me that we've built up this female grievance industry to the great detriment of women.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think in general, this sense of victim mentality has been monetized, monopolized in the cultures to make people feel like I'm a victim, I'm oppressed, somebody's wronged me, I need to break free from that, I need to overcompensate.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, I mean, that's why these terms, you mentioned this at the beginning, like mansplaining, that's a huge thing of like when sometimes men are just like talking to a woman and just saying whatever's on their mind, the woman interprets that as you're mansplaining. You think I don't know what it is that you're explaining to me, so you feel the need to break it down for me. You think that I'm not smart enough. You think I'm dumb, and then there's just this weird dance between men and women. Now the man's afraid to say what's on his mind because he's afraid of being interpreted as a mansplainer. Now the woman is afraid to speak her mind because she's afraid she's going to be interpreted as dumb and she doesn't fully understand it. She's too emotional or whatever it is. Yeah, and I think that both men and women have lost the art of appreciating the tendencies that come naturally to each sex that are admirable. Like, men are able to articulate things very directly and concisely and bluntly in a way that sometimes women are scared of. They're more mindful of how this could come off, and so they can dance around things at times. At the same time, there is something nice to a feminine touch of explaining something and receiving something in that way. So I don't know. I think
Well, none of us knows. I think that what I do think an article like this to me is really refreshing in the sense of we got to get this stuff out on the table, and we don't want like a young woman who's been educated or has been miseducated into this grievance thing, or the young man who has been malformed by isolation and all the tools of isolation that are available to young men now. We don't want them to be unhappy. Like, we don't want to just point to them and blame them. Like, something has gone wrong with society, and if we don't learn to love each other, men and women learn to love each other, then we're doomed. So I don't think you need to have the answers, but I do appreciate that these two, Samuel Abrams and Joel Kotkin, I appreciate that they got into it a little bit, because it's time for
sure.
some really blunt stuff needs to be said. And it needs to, and maybe it doesn't need to be said bluntly. Maybe that's what I need to listen to you to learn, Emily. But it's got to be said. It's got to be like, what is happening with young men? It's not fair what's happening to. I don't feel like I was treated unfairly. My generation probably went the other way. But if there's a pendulum swinging, young men are just being utterly dislocated from society. We can't just go tough it out. Be as tough as the girls. That's not going to work. We need to find out what's wrong.
Yeah, I mean, the suicide rates, the alcoholism rates, drug addiction rates, homelessness rates are all higher for men. If you're a man, you're more likely to be homeless than a woman. If you're a man, you're more likely to be addicted to drugs, to commit suicide in your, mid 30s, 40s than a woman is. So this idea that women are oppressed and they have it badly in society, it's like, I mean, maybe in certain contexts, it's harder for us. But for men, if I went out on the streets and I had nowhere to go, I would more likely be taken in by somebody than a man would. And I would call that a benefit. And so Yeah, men definitely are becoming more isolated, and this whole narrative that men are the issue, men are the problem, it's just fueling that. And it's unfortunate because, like you said, we're not actually being blunt, we're not getting to the truth of the matter, and that's not fixing anything. So,
Yeah, and maybe we can't get to the truth of the matter. Maybe it will only be those young men and women who have the bravery to say, I'm going to try this relay. You know, I'm going to do it. Like they'll actually work out the issues. You know, it's
yeah.
speaking as a husband, it is extremely healing for a man when a woman hears and understands. Like I don't,
Yeah.
you have to ask my wife if that healing goes the other way, but the I just don't think we can do that. That can't be a societal project. That has to be individual women deciding, yes, I am going to listen to this man, or I'm going to be that person for him. And men have to do that for women, and they got to stop going, she's a liberal, oh, he's a conservative, and get down to the work of being human beings together. Maybe that's, I don't know. Maybe that's all we can do is just encourage people, get in those relationships. It's going to hurt like hell, and that's good for you. Stop whining, rub a little dirt on it, and keep going.
Yeah, no, I second that. Yeah, I
Do you?
think people just need to do it, and they need to stop overanalyzing, stop overthinking it.
Right.
And once you break down those boundaries and these narratives that you've constructed in your head about these other people, and you just sit with them, there's so much, like, it is so much more productive, and there's so much more you can learn than anything you imagine in your head. So,
Yeah. Right.
yeah.
Right. And then there is the benefit of marriage that I don't think enough people talk about, but I'm 30 years married. And
That's awesome.
when you become friends, then your life is just transformed. I don't think we tell enough young men about how much fun fatherhood is. First of all, you're going to love it. Do you love being a father?
I love it.
Jeff, you do?
Yes.
Yeah,
it's great.
Is your son here? Are you just saying that because he's...
No.
I saw him around here before, didn't I?
No, that was yesterday.
Oh, yesterday. All right. You're going to love being a father, and friendship with a woman, lifelong friendship with a woman. There's nothing that will do good for your soul like that. We got to somehow get them to, and then we need to get women to allow them to be in a relationship with them, despite the fact that, yes, we learn to read later. We're dumber, okay? Get over it. All right, we better take a quick break. We got to do the show. Emily, I love that you do this with us. Thanks. Will you do Thursdays with us in the coming new year?
Yes, let's do it.
All right, we will not see you next week because we're not going to ask you to work on Christmas Day. All right.
Oh, thank you.
Jeff,
You're
you
so
have to work
kind.
on Christmas Day. All right. I expect you to be there behind Jeff Camp for Christmas Day. All right, let's shut all this equipment down, and it's overheating anyways, and we'll get it ready for the